I stand at the iron gate of our cul-de-sac with a clipboard and a cheap radio that picks up more static than words. A line of SUVs forms a second wall behind the metal bars, hoods pointed outward, keys removed, batteries disconnected to keep anyone from deciding to ram the gate open if panic wins over reason. The neighborhood sign still says "Welcome to Brook Hollow Estates." The paint flakes in the morning sun. I have a thermos of instant coffee and a list of call signs we agreed on last night. It looks serious on paper. It looks thin against what is coming up the avenue. We started with confidence. 48 homes behind a single entrance, a maintenance road hidden by hedges, and a 3-foot berm dotted with little trees that had looked decorative last month and now hold nails on fishing line. I walked the loop with Mark on the first day the city advised people to stay home. Mark used to do risk audits for office parks. He speaks in short sentences that sound like bullet points. He pointed at sight lines, wrote down where to place cars, and told Harold, our homeowners association president, that the gate was the only thing that mattered. If the gate holds, we can argue forever. If the gate fails, the argument ends in 1 minute. Harold likes chairs set in a circle and votes by hand. He also likes reminding everyone about dues. On day 2, he called a meeting in the tennis court. I brought a yellow pad, not because I love minutes, but because I knew the decisions would become stories in a week, and stories get bent if no one writes them down. Julia brought a cooler with a red cross taped to the lid. She is a nurse, and she placed the cooler on the table like an anchor. She said insulin needs refrigeration, and antibiotics do not grow on trees. No one argued with her. The sun lit the lines on the court. A loose wire on the fence clicked in the breeze and put a sharp little rhythm behind every sentence. We set guard posts. Front gate is post 1, 2 hours per shift, 2 people per shift. Post 2 is the maintenance road, which is really a narrow strip of asphalt behind a stand of cypress where the landscapers used to stash a trailer. We chained that gate and wrapped it in a tarp so it would not reflect in streetlights. Mark drew patrol routes in my notebook with a carpenter's pencil. He assigned me the morning gate because I am patient, and I do not yell unless something truly matters. I accepted the pen he held out and signed my name next to the shift block. That simple act felt like tightening a bolt. Food came next. We inventoried pantries in a polite rush. Everyone said he had more than he really did. I watched hands hover over shelves. I watched small lies try to become harmless and then shrink when someone thought about how long this could last. Rice, beans, canned vegetables, oats, pasta, peanut butter, oil. We set a pool of shared staples and a rotation. The rule was clean and blunt. If you draw from the pool, you contribute something to the pool. Children get first portion. Elderly get second. No open containers get returned to the shared table. I wrote it down and slid the paper under clear tape on the clubhouse window. At first it felt like camp. We placed orange buckets near the pool for water, and we hung 2 filters over a folding table. We registered generators and fuel and made a schedule. 2 hours in the morning to keep freezers cold. 2 hours in the evening for lights and phone charging. No television. It eats power and feeds panic. Harold announced the schedule with a little smile, and I watched him enjoy this version of leadership. Then a convoy of city ambulances drifted by the entrance without sirens, glass smeared with handprints, and the sound in my head changed from a list to a clock. I see the first infected on my second morning at the gate. He moves with a slow, wrong rhythm. His shirt is stuck to him, and his left shoe is gone. He drifts against the bars and leaves a smear. He looks past me at the neat lawns and the stucco and the blue pool water glittering beyond the hedges. I stand with a shovel and a length of pipe Mark wrapped with grip tape. Mark says distance is safety. I agree. The man presses his mouth through the bars and makes a low sound. I ask if anyone recognizes him. The men on shift with me shake their heads. We do not open the gate. We do not talk to him like he can answer. I make a mark on the clipboard next to a line Julia drew for sightings. A single number on a page makes the morning feel heavier than the air. By afternoon, we take down the basketball hoop on Maple Court and use the pole to brace the gate from the inside. Rob brings a box of roofing nails, and we scatter them in a bin near post 1. If a driver tries to force his way in, we are supposed to dump the nails in the lane and back away. It sounds calm when we say it out loud. It looks clumsy when we rehearse. The third time through, I catch my foot on the chain and the bin tips and nails clatter across the pavement. The noise sets off 2 dogs on Oak Lane and the racket rips through the quiet like a saw through drywall. I sweep up in silence while Rob watches the street. The first power struggle arrives in the shape of a minivan from outside. It rolls up at sunset with hazard lights winking. A woman steps out with her hands high and calls a name. Lisa runs from the guard table, throws the deadbolt off the pedestrian gate, and presses her face to the bars. The woman outside is her sister. Behind her sits a man with a baby seat. The baby seat holds a sleeping child whose face is the solid calm of complete trust. Harold raises both hands and tells Lisa to step back. He says we agreed to a quarantine period. Lisa points at the baby and says the baby is family. Harold says rules matter or rules disappear. The whole argument hangs in the air between the tooth of the gate and the curve of the minivan's fender. I step forward and say we can do quarantine in the model home that never sold. It has a lock and it is close to the entrance. We can pass food through a window. Julia nods and says she will take temperature and check wounds and listen to lungs through a mask she found in a toolbox. Harold looks relieved because the rule can stand and the child can sleep indoors. He looks at me like we just saved his face and his plan with one sentence. I watch Lisa's shoulders settle as she walks her sister around the curve to the empty house. The night air smells like cut grass and generator exhaust. It smells like a backyard party without the voices. On day 4, the pool turns into a reservoir. We stretch a tarp over a section to slow evaporation. Harold is not amused because he paid for that pool with his dues twice over, and he uses it to calm himself on weekends. I help drape the tarp anyway, because no one cares about laps when taps run dry. We test the filters and mark a bucket as gray for mopping and toilets. This makes the clubhouse bathroom smell like an old dock, but the gravel behind the maintenance shed smells worse, and we all know it. Mark holds a little chalkboard and writes water, 2 gallons per person per day, with neat squares around the number 2. Relatives argue with math. Thirst does not. At the evening meeting, a rumor arrives. The university hospital closed its doors to new patients. A deputy's wife heard it on a locked channel. The word sits in the center of the circle like a heavy tool. Julia does not speak. She tightens the strap on the cooler. Rob says his cousin can get us a pallet of bottled water if we open the gate for 10 minutes tomorrow morning. Harold says no. Mark says 10 minutes is an hour in this world. Rob says he is not asking, he is telling. I stare at the lines on the tennis court until the argument runs out of air. The last light fades and everyone stands too quickly, bumping chairs and looking at faces as if faces can offer proof. I sleep on my couch with a radio against my shoulder and my boots near the door. Every creak in the rafters sounds like a plan in motion. I hear a vehicle coast and stop and coast again, like someone is saving fuel and using gravity to cheat the distance. I sit up and count to 20 because counting slows the mind. Then I move. Out the door, down the path between hedges, past the ornamental fountain where the pump stopped yesterday and the water turned dull. Post 1 is empty. The nails bin is gone. The gate chain sits loose on the post. I run to the maintenance gate and find Mark with a flashlight pointed down and away. He says someone opened the front gate and let a pickup roll into the roundabout. He says the driver had the lights off and a face I did not recognize. Tires did not shred because the nails were not there. He says he shouted code. The driver floored it and clipped a mailbox and sped to the clubhouse. Mark shows me the missing link in the chain where a bolt cutter bit clean. I do not say any words out loud. I hold my breath and listen. A new sound pours into the quiet. Voices not from our homes. Voices from the clubhouse, drawers pulled, glass pushed aside. We move without yelling. Mark takes the long side and I take the short steps past the pool. The clubhouse door stands open and the battery lantern we keep on the table throws a soft cone. I see 2 men stuffing bags with food and a third kneeling by the outlet strip where the generator cord runs. He holds a plug in his hand and a grin that says he knows what power feels like. He looks up and sees me and his grin flickers. I lift the pipe. He drops the plug and stands. Mark steps into the light behind the man. All 4 of us pause while a single cricket chirps on and off near the vending machine. The man with the grin does something smart. He lifts his hands and backs away, eyes on the pipe, mouth closed. He taps his friend with his elbow. The bags have oatmeal, formula, batteries, and a small mountain of ibuprofen. No one wants a fight in a room with glass doors. Mark nods at the bags and says, "Return those and leave." The man with the grin nods, then ad-libs. He says he wants 1 bag of formula and a battery pack for the road. Mark looks at me. I think of the child in the model home. I say, 1 container of formula. The man nods and plucks 1 can with a twitch fast enough to make me want to change my mind. He steps out with his hands high, empty palms on display. We follow him to the gate and watch him vanish into the tree line. The quiet that follows is not relief. It is a picture of how thin this is. The next morning, Harold wants punishment. He says someone in our group had to move those nails and cut that chain. He says a rule without consequence is not a rule. He says we need to search garages for tools that can breach the gate. Mark says we need calm, then says it again until the pitch of his voice drops. Lisa says no one in our group would do that. Rob stares at the ground. I see a smudge of oil on his left shoe and file it in the same folder where I keep the numbers for water and the names of kids with asthma. A folder labeled, "Not for public comment." By noon, the maintenance gate gets an upgrade. We drag a boat trailer across the path and chain it to a tree. We wedge a refrigerator on its side to fill a gap. Someone laughs because the image looks ridiculous. A refrigerator guarding a gate. No one laughs twice. Sweat tracks dust on forearms. Mark scribbles adjustments on the roster. He adds Ethan to my patrol because he wants me to teach the kid patience. Ethan is 16 and walks like the ground is too slow for him. He takes 2 steps ahead and then 2 steps back, like the air is a hallway he keeps testing for exits. Julia asks for more generator time. She needs cold for insulin. Mrs. Alvarez sits in a folding chair with a blanket draped over her shoulders, though the day is warm. Her husband tries to look helpful by moving small items across the table and placing them in neat stacks. He places a stack of gauze squares and then moves the same stack to the other corner. Harold says the schedule is the schedule. Julia lowers her voice and speaks just to me. She says the cooler cannot hold temperature if we keep switching it on and off. I look at the child in the model home through the window, and then at the cooler, and then at Harold. I say we trade. 3 phones go uncharged tonight. The generator runs 30 extra minutes for medication. Harold opens his mouth, closes it, and nods. The nod makes him look smaller, not larger. At dusk, a man walks up the avenue with his shirt wrapped around his forearm. He calls for help and stops 10 feet from the bars. The road behind him lays empty. His eyes are wrong, not vacant, focused on our faces like a camera hungry for exposure. He lifts his arm, and the cloth falls, and the bite shows as a ring of bruised skin with broken lines. He says he just needs a bandage and some water. He says his wife is close. He says he will stand right here while we bring something. He talks with the cadence of someone selling roof repairs after a hailstorm. I do not move. Julia stands a step behind me and does not move. Mark says, "Keep moving." The man looks at him, and then at the gate, and then at the houses. And then he drops his good hand to his side like he remembered every tool he ever used is behind those bars. He turns and walks away without another sound. I mark the clipboard and go back to counting cars. The days blend into a list of small jobs done with care. We cut old hose to make a siphon for trapped water and sprinklers. We collect mail for people who stopped coming out of their houses. We post a board for names and requests and trade offers. We keep radios on the same channel and we say the code words we agreed on even when voices are familiar. In a normal week, these habits would feel unnecessary. Here, they keep an edge on attention. But power struggles grow where attention goes thin. At the evening circle, a new line opens. Who decides who gets in if more family arrive? Harold says the committee. Lisa asks who is the committee now. Harold lists names. I count 5 men and 1 woman. Julia raises her hand. Harold adds her name without looking at her. The shape of the circle changes in the space around her. On day 7, the first inside infection appears. Not from a breach, from a choice. A teenage girl sneaks out the maintenance gate at night to find her boyfriend, who stayed in an apartment beyond the golf course. She returns through a gap in the hedge at dawn with a story about a safe corner on the 2nd floor of a building, and a promise that the 2 of them can live there if this place turns hard. She has a scrape on her knee and a flush in her cheeks that looks like embarrassment. By noon, she is under a blanket, and Julia is on the radio asking for more ice. By evening, Mark posts a note on the tennis court fence. No one leaves without a partner and a reason. The letters look too large, like he wrote them on a page and the page expanded. I walk nightly patrol with Ethan and teach him to listen past the first sound. A noise in the brush can be a possum or a person or a tire shifting. He wants to call every sound a person. I place a hand on his arm and wait with him. We hear a metallic tap, then a scrape like a chain sliding. We approach slow, with tools lowered. A broom falls out of the top of a trash can next to the clubhouse door. Ethan laughs and then clamps his mouth shut. He looks across the pool at the tiled steps, and I can tell what he is thinking. He is thinking about how to swim across in case we need to cross without the path. I do not say it out loud. I nod. We lift the broom and place it inside the door. Small order in a field of chaos gives the mind something to grip. On day 9, the water company stops pumping. The pressure falls and the last tap coughs air. We saw it coming, and still the sound reaches into every kitchen. People stand at sinks with empty pots and a look that asks for a solution that does not exist. We roll out the pool buckets and organize a line. 2 per house in the morning, 2 in the evening. No exceptions. A man from Dogwood Court shows up with 4 coolers and says he has a pregnant wife and a mother with bad knees. Mark says 2. The man repeats 4. The air gets a current in it. I step between them and hand the man my second bucket. He stares at my face and then lowers his coolers and takes the bucket and walks away. Mark says he cannot make exceptions, and I say I did. He exhales and marks something in his book that looks like a favor he will have to repay. Night brings headlights at the far end of the avenue and a horn that sounds once and then cuts. Rob jogs from his porch with a shotgun held tight to his chest and stands behind the SUVs like a man in an old photograph. The truck creeps forward and stops at the line. A man steps out with a map folded in his back pocket. He says he has water and diesel and canned fruit in the truck bed, and he wants jewelry, tools, and medicine in return. He speaks calmly, and he keeps his hands away from his belt. Harold starts toward him, and Mark catches Harold's sleeve. We have nothing to do with jewelry. Tools are the bones of the place. Medicine is life. The man waits with patience that comes from practice. He is a store in motion, and he knows his margins. I say we can trade for 1 case of water and 6 cans of fruit. He smiles without it reaching his eyes and asks for insulin. Julia says no from behind me, not to him, to the air. The man nods once and gets back in his truck. He looks at the houses and the hedges and the gate and the chain and the refrigerator on its side behind the maintenance road, and he drives away. I add a line in my notebook. First trader, not desperate. Sleep thins. Arguments thicken. A rumor starts about which houses still have private stock hidden from the pool. Names surface. A box of granola bars goes missing from the clubhouse. A window in the model home cracks from a thrown rock. The baby inside wakes and cries, and the whole front half of the neighborhood stops in place to listen. Lisa moves to the window and presses her palm to the glass. Her sister sits on a mattress on the floor and stares at the rock like it contains a message. No one claims the throw. The rock sits on the sill until dusk swallows it. Day 11. The generator sputters in the evening and dies. We pull the cord again and it coughs. We siphon from mowers and tilt gas cans and catch the last drops in funnels made from water bottles. The engine turns and catches and sputters, and then steadies in a low, stubborn hum. The lights in the clubhouse flicker and the cooler fan resumes. Mrs. Alvarez's husband cries without sound and kisses Julia's hand. Julia steps back, wipes her palm on her jeans, and goes about taping a thermometer reading to the inside of the cooler lid. She moves like someone who has watched many rooms try to do too much with too little. I walk the perimeter after midnight. The air holds a clean chill that makes sounds crisp. I hear the whisper of tires long before I see any shape. I duck behind a hedge and watch a compact car slow without lights and roll to a stop at the corner by the mail kiosk. The door opens. A boy and a girl slide out, both too thin. The girl carries a bag of clothes. The boy carries a crowbar he uses to nudge the pedestrian gate. The lock holds. He crouches and peers through the bars and whispers to the girl. She nods and steps back. He raises the crowbar to strike. I step out of the hedge and say no. He freezes. The girl makes a little sound, not fear, surprise. I say no again, and I do not lift my pipe. I just plant my feet. He lowers the bar. I can see the bones of his wrists. I say, not tonight. He nods once and steps backward, and the car drifts away in silence. I stand until the engine fades. Then I walk to the gate and tighten the deadbolt and rub oil into the hinge that screamed when he tested it. I do not tell anyone in the morning, not because I hide it, because not every fear needs a meeting. The collapse does not arrive with a roar. It arrives in parts. A chain link here, a truss line there. On day 13, Harold pushes for a formal curfew. No lights after 10, no walking after 9. He wants order. He also wants control. Rob opposes it because he does not like anyone telling him when he can stand on his own lawn. Julia says curfew means nothing if people are up with sick kids. Lisa says she will not turn off a porch light when her sister lies awake in the model home. Mark scribbles both sides on his pad and says the gate remains the only thing that matters. He is right, and the argument ignores him. Later that day, Ethan disappears. His mother finds a note in his room. It says he went to get his girlfriend's family from the apartments. It says he has to help, and he will use the hole behind the hedges at the maintenance gate. And he knows where the nails bin is. The note makes my ribs feel like thin wood. We fan out down the berm and into the trees where the landscapers kept their mulch. Mark finds the gap he did not know existed. Someone used pruners to cut the synth hedge backing. The path is neat in a way that says practice, not impulse. We wait in place, because running into the street at random is the same as getting lost. Ethan returns at dusk with 4 people and a backpack that clinks. His girlfriend walks like she has not eaten in a day. Her mother walks with a limp. Her father carries a toddler on his hip and glances over his shoulder every 6 steps. Behind them, shadows move in that slow, wrong rhythm. The gap looks suddenly like a mouth. I wave them in, and Mark takes the toddler and passes him through while Harold screams about rules and quarantine. Julia sets her jaw and grabs bandages and water. The first infected reaches the hedge and presses its face into the mesh and pulls at the cut plastic like a curtain. I drop my pipe across the gap and feel the tug of hands on the other side. The hedge groans. Rob fires one warning shot into the dirt, and the noise slams the air flat. The infected do not care about warning shots. They care about the hole. We stack lawn furniture and a wheelbarrow and 2 stone planters against the opening. It looks stupid, and it works for 5 minutes, which is enough to move the new family to the model home and slam the door and wedge it with a broom handle. The infected keep pressing, but the mesh holds for now. Ethan stands with his hands on his knees and stares at the ground. His mother holds his shoulders and does not speak. Harold points at me and says I started this when I made exceptions. His voice cracks around the edges. I do not answer him because the question is wrong. The hole is not a policy mistake. The hole is the thing inside people that wants to help one more time, even when the tank is at empty. Night falls. We move the guard post from the front gate to the hedge gap. The front looks quiet, which feels like a trick. The hedge whispers with small movements. Every minute or two, a hand or a face presses and then slips. Julia posts a rotation for the model home quarantine and gives Lisa a timer to remind her when to pass water through the cracked window near the kitchen. The timer ticks like a slow metronome and slowly resets my breathing to its pace without me choosing it. Rob wants to go look for more fuel. Mark says no. Harold says we should hold a vote. I say the vote is the hedge. He stares at me as if I spoke a code that excludes him. At dawn, the infected thin, the way a crowd thins when breakfast wins over spectacle. We reinforce the gap with a section of chain link we pull off the back of the tennis court. We zip tie it to the hedge frame and back it with plywood. It looks ugly and strong. Mark finally smiles, a quick flat line that disappears as soon as it arrives. He steps back, wipes his hands on his pants, and says, "Hold the gate." He is a man with 1 sentence left in him. I let him keep it. The day brings heat and the smell of trash that no longer leaves the property. We dig a trench near the drainage culvert and bury what we can. Flies set up their own schedule and ignore ours. A woman on Birch Court yells about her missing dog. She says she heard him bark near the hedge, and now she cannot find him. She blames Ethan to his face. Ethan takes it like a stone. I tell her we will keep an eye out. I do not tell her what the hedge does to small animals now. I clean my shovel and write a line in the notebook that reads, "Don't promise." Late afternoon, the man with the truck returns with 2 different men. No grin now, more purpose. He stops beyond the nail line and steps out with a rag raised like a flag. He says he has information. He says the next neighborhood over fell this morning, and anyone who wants to leave should leave now while the main road is clear. He says a bus crashed at the light and drew a lot of attention, and there is a hole in the fence behind the pharmacy that leads to the canal. He is selling news because news is the only thing that never goes out of stock. Harold says we will stay. The man shrugs and drives away. I watch the road past his bumper. It looks empty and hungry. We call a meeting, not in the tennis court, at the gate. The hedge gap pops and creaks in the heat. The talk runs in circles and keeps coming back to the same point. Trust. Who has it? Who deserves it? Lisa says she trusts me because I do not talk much, and I keep showing up where it is dull. Julia says she trusts Mark's plans because they do not rely on luck. Rob says he trusts his own eyes. Harold says trust is earned, and he holds the ledger. The air shifts. The child in the model home coughs. The hedge lets out a new sound, a zipper of ties creeping. I move before thinking, because not all decisions need argument. The plywood door flexes. A zip tie snaps. A hand snakes in and catches on a loop of wire and hangs there, fingers twitching. It looks almost gentle from a distance until the wrist jerks and the head pushes and the mesh bites skin. Ethan steps forward with a pair of loppers and cuts the wire. The hand falls back and disappears. Everyone stands still in a posture that isn't fear and isn't calm. It is work. We add 2 more boards and a beam across the back and set cinder blocks at the base. We do it fast and quiet. The argument drains from faces as if we forgot why we were angry. Night falls hot. Harold posts the curfew anyway. Porch lights blink off in rows, more out of habit than obedience. I sit on the curb near the gate with my radio and a bag of dry crackers and watch moths throw themselves at the dim strip of light bleeding from the clubhouse door. Mark joins me and says he miscounted fuel. He says we have 3 days at this rate. He watches my face to see if I will do his math for him. I say we cut generator hours by half and rotate freezers, 1 neighborhood bank of outlets per day. He nods without arguing. He looks old and honest in the weak light. We fold our notes back into our pockets at the same time. It feels like practice. Day 15 arrives on a hot wind that carries the sound of something large hitting something metal over and over in the distance. The sound repeats every minute. Not like panic, like work. The infected numbers outside the hedge double by 9 in the morning. Someone has decided our street looks promising. The gap holds, but every new press stretches a tie 1 more ratchet. Julia moves the insulin into a smaller cooler and hands out paper cups of water like communion. Mrs. Alvarez is pale but awake. Rob drips gas into the generator with a funnel and orders me to cover him, which I do without liking the tone. He pours too fast and we lose a thin stream to the gravel. The smell rises and wraps the scene in a do not drop sign. At noon, the bus arrives. The sound we heard becomes visible. A city bus with Brook Hollow Loop in faded letters turns the corner, dragging scrap on a chain. The bus lurches into our avenue and stops 20 feet short of the gate. The doors accordion open, and a man steps down with a metal pipe. He is not infected. He is tired and determined. He points his pipe at the chain on our gate, and at the SUVs, and at the refrigerator behind the maintenance road. He has been shopping for weak spots all day, and his eyes land on each in quick succession, as if his head holds a checklist, not a conscience. He calls out that he wants fuel, water, and food. He has passengers who will help him take it. He has the engine idling and the dead mass behind him to push if we give him a foothold. Harold steps forward and announces rules. The man laughs and taps the gate with his pipe as if he is sounding a beam. The bus engine roars. The infected turn as one toward the sound like plants toward light. The avenue fills with movement. The man misreads the tide. He believes he can take from us and outrun the sweep behind him. He raises his pipe. Rob raises his shotgun. Mark raises both palms and yells hold. I dump the nails across the lane and shout for everyone to pull back and guard the hedge. The bus lurches. The front tire climbs the nails and sags with a flat thump. The man curses and slams the pipe into the bars out of frustration rather than strategy. The infected reach the sides of the bus. What follows is a set of choices with no good options. We cannot open the gate to help the passengers because the bus would wedge and hold the gate for the infected. We cannot ignore them because sound and motion will use our homes as a drum. The infected press. The passengers pound on windows. The man swings the pipe and yells that we are cowards. He hits the gate one more time for pride. The hinge rattles and the top bracket loosens one notch. Not a break, a warning. I look at Mark. He meets my eyes and shakes his head once. Not a no, a count, 1 minute. Harold runs to the clubhouse and returns with the emergency flare gun we keep for signaling. He aims high and fires into the sky over the bus. The flare arcs and hisses and lands on the roof rack of a parked sedan across the street and melts into the paint. The bus passengers scream and the infected surge toward the light. The sedan roof sags. Smoke rolls low and slow. The infected circle, confused for a beat, and then flow toward the heat. The bus driver floors the engine, and the rim chews the pavement, and the bus drags itself backward like a stubborn animal forced to yield. It clears the nail field and turns, rim grinding, and disappears around the curve. The infected tide follows. The street smells of burned paint and anger. Harold turns to the circle with triumph on his face and loses the room in 2 seconds. Lisa asks if he meant to set a car on fire near a hedge. Rob says the flare was his idea 3 days ago and Harold stole it. Julia says both are wrong because smoke draws more trouble. Mark says the bracket on the gate is loose and we have 10 minutes to fix it before we get a second visit. I run for a wrench and bolts and return to find Ethan already up on a ladder with a socket in his hand. I hold the ladder. He tightens the bracket. The metal sings a little and then rests. We both nod, the kind of nod you make when you know something held for now. By evening, the hedge crackles even when no one touches it. The plastic mesh has stretched as far as it can. The plywood bows inward. The night brings wind, and wind brings branches down on the mesh, and the mesh answers with small tears. Mark pulls me aside. He says we can hold this for 1 more day if we do not open the gate for any reason. He looks past me to the model home. I follow his gaze. 4 faces look out from the cracked window. The child sleeps. The mother stares at the hedge. The father clutches the broomstick on the inside of the door like it can bargain with hunger. We hold most of the night. The radio hisses and murmurs with voices out in the county, repeating the same stories with different names. We hear about a church that held firm until the doors became useful wood. We hear about a sports bar that turned into a clinic and then awake. We hear nothing from the city. At 3 in the morning, a new sound walks up our avenue. Not tires, feet, many feet. Not in step, in friction. The hedge whistles under load. The plywood bows with a sound that makes the skin on my arms feel too tight. I call Mark. He says, "All hands to the hedge." We drop 2 more beams, but beams need time and we do not have it. The mesh goes with a rip I will hear in any quiet room for the rest of my life. Hands through first, then faces, then hips pushing until the gap coughs out a person. We push back with tools, not to kill, to move bodies away from the opening long enough to set the beam. We do not look people in the eyes. That is a rule I learn in 1 second. The beam settles. The next gap opens 6 feet to the right, as if the hedge adapted. We do it again. We work in a line, each person placing weight where the other person cannot. Harold appears with a whistle that has no effect on anything alive. Rob stands to my left, silent, working. Julia works with tape and water and a prayer under her breath that has no words I can hear. It is not a battle in the way movies show it. It is a series of adjustments. Hand here, board there, rope across, step back, repeat. Someone screams a name. Someone else shouts for a light. The light goes out because it is time for the generator to sleep. And I did not change the schedule because I thought the schedule mattered more than the moment. I run to the cord and pull, and the engine coughs and then catches, and the clubhouse throws a thin square of light across the hedge that gives us enough to see the next gap. We close it. Another opens. The front gate holds because we are not there. No one watches it except the bracket and the brace and the memory of our hands. At dawn, the infected roll off like a tide. The gaps gape. The hedge leans. Our bodies sag. We stand in a row with boards and pipes and loppers and look at each other without bravado. We are a neighborhood that has held one more night. The sun rises and shows us a street that has become a diagram of labor and luck. I write a line in my head. If a place survives, it is because work stood between it and collapse every minute of a day, not because of signs or slogans. We have to choose. Stay and rebuild the hedge and hope the next push waits long enough for us to tie the mesh back into the frame. Or leave along the route the trader described, through the hole by the pharmacy and down the canal where water runs low enough to walk. Harold calls a vote. Mark says votes waste time now. Julia says she will not leave her patients in the model home. Lisa says her sister needs a 2nd day of quarantine and cannot walk far. Rob says the bus will return with more friends. I say we split. We set a time. We pack quietly. We leave a map on the clubhouse table with arrows and notes for anyone who comes behind us. We take what we can carry and nothing that shines. Packing does not look heroic. It looks like a man elbow deep in a drawer deciding which batteries will matter and which souvenirs cannot pay rent. I empty my safe into 2 piles. One goes into a backpack. One goes back into the safe with the door open so no one wastes time breaking it. I shoulder a duffel with rope, filters, a tarp, and 3 cans of peaches. I write a note and tape it to my fridge with the list of what I took, as if accounting will prove we tried. At the gate, we hug like co-workers leaving a job at different hours. Julia presses her kit to her chest and says she will guide Lisa's family later if the child is cleared. Harold shakes my hand with the grip of a man who still thinks handshakes make deals. Mark touches foreheads with his kids and sends them with his wife down the canal route while he stays 1 more hour to watch the bracket. Rob adjusts his sling and checks his ammunition and joins my group. Because he loves his house, but he does not love the gate more than his life. We move at a steady pace along the fence line behind the pharmacy. The hole is real. The canal smells of algae and old tires. It is shaded and quiet in the way a back stairwell is quiet. We step into the shallow water and feel silt grab at our boots. We pass under a bridge where someone scrawled a message in paint. Turn back. The arrow points toward home. I do not see any point in reading it as an instruction. I read it as a memory of someone else's moment when the place behind him still had value. We keep walking. The canal opens near a power substation where the chain link tore long before this week. We climb through and cross a field of dry grass that bows underfoot. I look back once. The view of our street through the trees looks like a photograph hung in a hallway. Neat, bright, untrue. For a second, I want to march back and bolt one more beam across one more gap. That is how a place keeps you. It hands you one more small job and promises that if you do it, the night will respect your effort. I keep walking because the promise is honest, but the math is not. We reach the canal bend, where the concrete wall lowers enough for a short ladder. Rob boosts Ethan, and then climbs. You can tell he has spent his life lifting more than language. We fan out across a parking lot and move along a delivery road that used to serve more frozen pizza than medicine. The city smells like warm metal. The only movement is flags tangled on poles and a paper banner still tied to a garden center entrance that says spring sale, as if the calendar never gets the news. We follow the trader's map to the end of the block. No ambush, no welcoming committee. Just power lines ticking and a line of grocery carts pressed against a fence by wind and time. We rest under a truck trailer and drink water that tastes of hose. Ethan holds his girlfriend's hand. She leans against his shoulder and watches the sky. Rob checks the fit of his sling and then sits and stares at the road with the focus of a man locking in the shape of a new world. I pull my notebook and write 3 items. Hedge failed, gate held, people chose. 2 families pass us on foot and nod. No one asks names. No one needs rules. The city has taken care of that. The rules shrink to simple. Do not attract attention. Do not make promises you cannot keep. Do not set fires to solve problems wind can carry. I look at my hands and do not see a hero or a coward. I see a man who built a small order and watched it fray at the edges until the holes touched. I am not ashamed. I am not proud. I am something that fits between those words. At dusk, we reach a narrow bridge over the canal and climb to a service path the traders use. Someone has painted arrows on the ground every 100 feet. They point away from neighborhoods. They point toward a public works yard that looks defensible. The arrows could be a trap. They could also be a sign that someone, somewhere, is trying to make a road without police and trucks and calendars. We move in that direction because movement beats stasis. We do not talk about going back. We all heard the mesh when it ripped. We all know that sound lives in the bones of a place. Even if we closed the gap, more sound would follow. We reach the yard after dark. A woman with a rake handle stands on the roof of a skid steer and calls down to us to state our business. She wears a city services vest that used to mean parking tickets. Now it means she has keys. I say we have water skills and a nurse and a kid who can climb into places adults cannot, and a man who can fix engines. She scans our faces and nods. She tells us to sleep under the lean-to and not touch the diesel drums unless asked. She tells us breakfast is at sunrise and consists of whatever the men at the river hauled. She walks away like a person who still believes that if you say a schedule out loud and then follow it, the day behaves. I lie on a pallet and look at the seam where corrugated tin meets crossbeam. The wind slips through with a low, steady hiss. The radio crackles and then settles. Somewhere behind us in the neighborhoods, porch lights flicker and go out. Someone will hold that hedge another night. Someone will fail it. The difference might be a board. It might be a quiet sentence spoken at the right time. It might be a boy who did not cut a hole to save someone he loved. I do not know. I know I am here with this small group of people who chose to move. In the morning, I will help set up a water line and show a man with sunburn how to keep a filter from clogging with algae. I will mark new call signs in my notebook, because radios make fear smaller by giving it structure. I will ask Julia if she wants me to walk back to the neighborhood to carry a cooler if Lisa's family is ready. She will decide. I will go if she asks. I will not go to fix the hedge. Not because I gave up, because a gate is only steel. A community is behavior. Ours revealed itself when the bus arrived and when the hedge groaned and when a child coughed behind a window. It is not dead. It is not alive. It is between, like me. I am a prepper who thought beans, bullets, and bandages were the whole list. The last weeks added 2 more items that weigh more than cans: patience and mercy. I watched patience buy us nights. I watched mercy complicate the math and still refuse to go away. I am leaving the sign at the yard gate as simple as I can write it, with a marker and a scrap of plywood. It says, "Water here, work welcome, no promises." It is not poetry. It is a rule that anyone can keep without breaking the next person. If you ask me whether community can exist after the world that taught it how to behave is gone, I will answer the way I answer questions about fuel and filters. It depends on the inputs and the maintenance. It depends on who holds the wrench when the bracket loosens. It depends on whether the person with the last dose of insulin sees a child as a reason to share or a reason to hide. We will keep building it in ugly yards and under lean-tos and behind gates that hold until they do not. When a thing breaks, we will decide whether to bolt it or bury it. Today I will bolt what I can. Tomorrow I may bury a sign and make a new one. I will write what we tried in a notebook for the next person who walks up to a fence and decides whether to turn back. I close my eyes and listen to the city breathe in a slow, uneven way. I can see the cul-de-sac in my mind and the hedge and the gap and the faces of neighbors who are now words in my notebook. I will carry those words as supplies. When someone asks me what to do at the next gate, I will tell him the truth that sat behind every list on that tennis court. Hold your gate, hold your temper, hold one person more than you can afford, and accept that the cost is real. If the gate falls, do not leave your kindness under it. Pick it up, walk, offer it again. That is the only part that felt like survival when everything else felt like maintenance.